Are you stretching your tight hip flexors every day, but they're still tight? Here's the truth. Stretching is actually making the issue worse. I'm going to show you what you can do instead and why this is 10 times more effective than stretching. Stretching a tight hip flexor is like pulling a jammed seatbelt in a car. No matter how hard you pull, if you don't fix the mechanism, in this case the muscles around the hip, no matter how hard you pull, it's not going to get anywhere. In this case, the muscles aren't doing their job properly, which is causing this feeling of tightness in the hip flexor. So instead of just working on the seatbelt, you actually need to reset the mechanism, and in this case, the whole system around the hip and your lower body. Two really important muscle groups that we need to train are the glutes and hamstrings. But before we get into that, we actually need to focus on the hip flexor itself and train this in a shortened and lengthened position. Think of the hip flexor a little bit like a rubber band. If you only train it in one position, it gets used to this position and it becomes less elastic and loses its function. Two really good options for this are the cable hip flexion in standing. Just use a PVC pipe or pole to support you. Simply set up in the attachment and then complete the exercise as shown. Do this nice, slow and controlled so you're not rushing with the exercise, and go for 2 to 3 sets of 15 to 20 reps. Exercise number 2 is a hip flexor sit-up. So grab a bench, set up as shown. Make sure the dumbbell or kettlebell you're using to anchor you is heavy enough so you don't fall over and injure yourself. And then complete the exercise as shown. Again, slow and controlled. Only go as far back as you can initially, because this will put quite a big stretch on the hip flexor in that lengthened position. As you build up tolerance and your body gets used to it, then you can go further and further back. Again, go for 2 to 3 sets of anywhere from 10 to 15 reps. As this gets easy with your body weight, then you can always add a dumbbell or a kettlebell in your hands to make this more challenging. Next up, we've got the glutes. If your glutes aren't strong enough and working properly, then your hip flexors are going to be working overtime. It's a little bit like driving a car downhill without any brakes. It's not going to go particularly well. Essentially, we need this balance between the front of your body, which is the hip flexors, and the back of your body, and the real powerhouse, which is your glutes. Two great options for this is the glute bridge, number 1. So again, grab a bench. Start off with a double leg glute bridge. So set up as shown. So your knees are going to go roughly at a 90-degree angle. Set up in the bottom position. Slightly tuck your chin so you've got a neutral spine, and then squeeze your glutes as hard as you can into that top position. Once this gets easy, and you can do this for 2 to 3 sets of 15 reps, then move on to a single leg glute bridge, which is exactly the same, but on one leg. To make this more challenging, grab a kettlebell or a dumbbell and stick it into your hip crease. The second exercise for the glutes is the curtsy lunge. So you're going to lunge back and to the side. Start off body weight, again, 2 to 3 sets of 12 to 15 reps. Once this gets easy, then add some weight in your hand with dumbbells. And then once this gets easy, then increase the height of the step down. So grab a 20 kilo or 25 kilo bumper plate and then step down from that, which will increase the stretch on the glute in that bottom position. Two more really important muscle groups are the abductors and adductors. But before we get into that, let's run through the hamstrings and how we can train those. This is a similar theme to the glutes and the hip flexors, because the hamstrings are at the back of your body. Again, we need to get a nice balance between the front, the hip flexors, and the hamstrings. The hamstrings sit slightly lower down compared to the glutes, and the hamstrings do 2 things. They extend your hip, so they help the glutes, and they also bend your knee. So we need to have an exercise that does hip extension, but also an exercise that flexes the knee. So exercise number 1 is a single leg RDL, which is focusing on hip extension. Set up as shown with your hand on a rig to support you. Grab the dumbbell in your hand. Think about sticking your hips back and letting that back leg come up as you slowly slide the dumbbell down your thigh. Only go to just below your knee while maintaining a neutral spine, and then use your glutes and hamstrings to stand back up. Go for 2 to 3 sets of anywhere from 10 to 12 reps. To make this more challenging, simply increase the weight of the dumbbell. Exercise number 2 is a single leg hamstring curl. Now you can either do this lying, seated or standing, depending on what machine you've got. And again, this is just to train knee flexion, which is another really important function of the hamstrings. Go for 2 to 3 sets of anywhere from 12 to 15 reps again. To make this more challenging, just increase the weight on the machine. If you haven't got a machine, you can also just use a banded hamstring curl, This is less effective, but if you haven't got a machine, it's better than doing nothing. Next, we're going to focus on the adductors. Now, the adductors are something that a lot of people don't train, and the reason for this is because a lot of people think we just move up and down as humans, whereas the adductors on the inside of the leg, but also the abductors on the outside of the leg, help us move efficiently side to side, which is also really, really important in day-to-day life, but also in sport. So one of the most effective ways to train your adductors is just a cable adduction. So set up in the same position as the hip flexion, but just side on. Again, use a PVC pipe or a wooden stick just to support you. Set up in that cable attachment, and then you're going to bring that leg towards your body with a challenging amount of weight on the stack. Again, go for 2 to 3 sets of 10 to 12 reps. Once this is easy and you haven't got any pain with this, then you can move on to a Copenhagen plank. Start off with a bent knee Copenhagen plank, then a straight leg Copenhagen plank, and then you can do a straight leg Copenhagen raise. And to make this more difficult, just stick some weight on your hip again with a kettlebell or a dumbbell. Go for 2 to 3 sets of anywhere from 10 to 12 reps. 2 more really important muscle groups are the quads and calves. But before we get into that, let's chat through the abductors, which are on the outside of your hip. 2 effective exercises to train this is the cable abduction. So again, similar setup to the adduction, but you're just going to go the other way. So you're going to be pulling that leg away from the cable machine. To make this more challenging, you can bend your knee slightly, and then you're going to lean into that as you pull your leg out, and this will just get a deeper stretch on the outside of that glute. Again, go for 2 to 3 sets of anywhere from 10 to 12 reps. To make this more challenging, just increase the weight on the stack. Next, we've got the quads. Now, a lot of people don't realize that one of the quad muscles, the rectus femoris, is actually a hip flexor as well. So we need to make sure we're training this in a shortened, but also a lengthened position, which a lot of people miss out. So a really nice way to do this for the quads is to do the reverse Nordic curl. So set up in this position. To start off with, just hold this position. Go as far back as you can while maintaining a neutral spine and squeezing your quads and glutes hard. Once this is comfortable and easy, then you can try to do some active reps of these where you're going back, again maintaining that neutral spine, and then using your quads to lift yourself back up. These are really, really challenging. So I'd start off with some holds, go for 3 sets of anywhere from 10 to 15 seconds, and then build up and do some active reps. And only go for a few reps here. So go for 2 to 3 sets of anywhere from 5 to 8 reps. If you need a bit of assistance when moving to the active reps, then just use a band to help you back up and attach it onto a rig like shown. Lastly, we've got the calves, which you might not think particularly relate to how the hip flexors work. But again, the lower body works as a machine as a whole. So you want to attack all these different areas of weakness. And a lot of people just don't train the calves properly. So we've got 2 exercises for this. One to focus on the gastrocnemius, which is that big muscle that you see on the surface, and this is most active in a straight leg position. So we're going to use a straight knee calf raise for this, off the edge of a plate or something where you can just get your heel dropping off as shown. Use your hand on a rig or something for support, so balance is the limiting factor, and then we're just going to complete slow and controlled reps as shown, making sure your knee stays locked and doesn't bend. To overload this, just use a dumbbell or a kettlebell in that other hand. Go for 2 to 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps. So go heavy on these because the calves are big muscles. They need heavy weight to actually grow and get stronger. Next, we have the bent knee calf raise, which focuses on the deeper soleus muscle, which actually produces more force than the gastroc, and it's really, really important. A lot of people miss this out. So again, same setup, just in a bent knee position. Again, overload this with a dumbbell or kettlebell. Same thing here, go for a lower rep range. So 2 to 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps. Stretching isn't bad, but in summary, it doesn't fix the root cause of the issue. We need to train the hips and the lower body as a machine, as a whole, and the hip flexors being tight is just a symptom of this. So you need to make sure you're training all these muscles as one in shortened and lengthened positions. Here's another YouTube video for you up here. And if you want to work with me one-to-one, just check out the links down below in the description. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.